Jake Harrison, the aforementioned human and recently inducted member of the Galactic Confederation's peacekeeping force, leaned back in his chair with a grin that could only be described as shit-eating. "You heard me, buddy. I want to sign up for the Cryzax Arena's next gladiatorial match. You know, the big fancy one with all the cheering crowds and deadly weapons." The Quartzian's crystalline body structure made a sound reminiscent of wind chimes in a hurricane as he attempted to process this information. "But Jake, those matches they're not for fun. They're ancient rituals of honor and bloodshed. Beings die in there." Jake took a long swig from his mug of something alarmingly purple and possibly radioactive before responding. Sounds like a typical Tuesday back on Earth. Besides, I need the practice." Practice. ZX Claw's voice rose an octave, causing nearby patrons to wince and cover their auditory organs. "Practice for what? Suicide?" The human's laughter boomed through the cantina, drawing curious and slightly terrified looks from the diverse array of alien species scattered about. "Nah, man. I've got a big mission coming up next month. Got to infiltrate some Zerulean pirate stronghold or something. Figured this would be a good warm-up." At this point, ZX Claw was seriously reconsidering his life choices, particularly the one that led him to befriend this insane Deathworlder. "Jake, my fragile friend, perhaps we should discuss this over a nice, calming game of hyper-chess instead." But Jake was already standing up, stretching his muscles in a way that made several nearby aliens instinctively seek cover. "Too late, ZX Claw. I already signed up. Match is in an hour. You're coming to watch, right?" The Quartzian's crystalline form sagged in defeat. "I suppose someone needs to be there to collect your shattered remains." "That's the spirit." Jake clapped his friend on the back, nearly shattering him in the process. "Now, let's go find me some proper gladiator gear. You think they'd let me use a chainsaw?" As Jake sauntered out of the cantina, leaving a wake of bewildered and slightly terrified aliens in his path, ZX Claw could only shake his eye stalks in resignation. He had a feeling this was going to be a very long day. The Cryzax Arena was a marvel of alien architecture, a towering structure of shimmering force fields and impossibly angled spires that seemed to defy the laws of physics. As Jake and ZX Claw approached the imposing entrance, the human's excitement was palpable. "Would you look at that?" Jake whistled appreciatively. "It's like the Roman Colosseum had a baby with a Tesla coil. Bet the acoustics in there are amazing." ZX Claw, who had been quietly contemplating the eulogy he'd have to give at Jake's funeral, snapped back to attention. "Jake, please. It's not too late to back out. We could go to the Galactic Zoo instead. I hear they have a new exhibit on non-lethal flora from the Andromeda Galaxy." Jake patted his friend's crystalline shoulder, careful not to apply too much pressure this time. "Relax, buddy. I've got this. Besides, I promised Grozdik I'd bring back a souvenir." "Grozdik? Your Vrexian roommate?" ZX Claw's eye stalks swiveled in confusion. "What kind of souvenir could you possibly get from a gladiatorial death match?" The human's grin turned mischievous. "Well, I was thinking maybe a tooth or a claw from whatever I'm fighting. You know, something to spruce up our living room." Before ZX Claw could voice his horror at this idea, they were approached by a tall, willowy alien with skin that shimmered like oil on water. The being's voice was melodious but tinged with confusion as it addressed Jake. "Greetings, human. I am Lyra Von, Master of Ceremonies for the Cryzax Arena. We received your application for today's match." The alien's iridescent eyes blinked rapidly. "I must confess, we were quite surprised. It's been centuries since a member of your species participated in our sacred rituals." Jake bounced on the balls of his feet, looking for all the world like an eager puppy about to go for a walk. "Well, you know what they say. Be the change you want to see in the galaxy and all that jazz. So, what am I up against? Some kind of vicious space tiger? Ooh, or maybe a giant carnivorous plant. I've always wanted to fight a Triffid." Lyra Von's composure slipped for a moment, revealing a mix of concern and fascination. "Actually, today's match is against a Kronos berserker." ZX Claw's entire body went pale, his usually vibrant crystal structure turning nearly transparent. "A Kronos berserker? But there. Awesome," Jake finished, completely misinterpreting his friend's terror. "I've heard about those guys. They're like, what, 9 feet tall? With 4 arms and that wicked acid spit." 7 arms, actually, Lyra Von corrected faintly. "And their blood is corrosive as well." Jake's eyes lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "Oh man, This is going to be great. Hey, quick question, are we allowed to bring our own weapons, or is it more of a whatever you can grab in the arena kind of deal? Lyra Vaughn seemed to be regretting every life choice that had led to this moment. Participants are allowed one personal weapon, but I must warn you, human Jake Harrison, the Kronos Berserker is a formidable opponent. Many great warriors have fallen before its might. I'm sure it'll be fine, Jake waved off the concern. I once wrestled an alligator for fun back on Earth. How much tougher could this be? As Lyra Vaughn led Jake away to prepare for the match, ZX Klorp found himself wishing, not for the first time, that he had chosen a nice, quiet career in quantum harmonics instead of joining the Galactic Confederation. At least then he wouldn't have to watch his best friend get turned into human confetti by a 7-armed killing machine. With a resigned sigh, the Quartzian made his way to the spectator stands. He had a feeling he was going to need a lot of therapy after this. The arena was packed to the brim with aliens of all shapes, sizes, and states of matter. The air crackled with excitement and the occasional discharge of static electricity from overly enthusiastic energy beings. ZX Klorp found himself wedged between a gelatinous blob that kept oozing onto his seat and a tall, spindly creature whose elbows, all 6 of them, seemed to be everywhere at once. As he settled in for what he was sure would be the most traumatic sporting event of his life, ZX Klorp couldn't help but overhear the conversations around him. I can't believe a human entered the arena. Didn't their species just join the Confederation like a galactic minute ago? I heard they come from a death world so harsh it makes Kronos look like a resort planet. No way. I thought humans were those squishy pink things that fainted at the sight of blood. ZX Klorp wanted to correct them, to tell them that humans were indeed squishy and pink, well, some of them, but they were also absolutely insane and had a disturbing tendency to treat deadly serious situations like a fun day at an amusement park. Before he could say anything, however, the arena lights dimmed and a hush fell over the crowd. Lyra Vaughn's voice boomed through the stadium, magically amplified to reach every corner. Esteemed beings of the Galactic Confederation, welcome to the Kryzax Arena, where legends are born and glory is written in stardust. The crowd went wild, a cacophony of cheers, roars, and what sounded suspiciously like mating calls from the Andromeda section. Today we have a most unusual match for you, Lyra Vaughn continued, their voice tinged with a mix of excitement and what might have been existential dread. In one corner, standing at an impressive 3 meters tall, with 7 arms of crushing power and blood that can melt through starship hulls, the undefeated champion from the radiation-soaked plains of Kronos, Groknar the Annihilator. The far side of the arena opened, and out stepped a behemoth that looked like it had been designed by a committee of nightmare enthusiasts. Groknar was a mountain of muscle, scales, and poorly contained rage. Each of its 7 arms ended in claws that could probably double a short-range spacecraft, and its mouth was filled with enough teeth to make a shark feel self-conscious. The crowd's cheers reached a fevered pitch as Groknar let out a roar that shook the very foundations of the arena. Several smaller aliens fainted on the spot, while others began frantically updating their wills on their data pads. ZX Klorp felt his crystalline structure vibrating with terror. If this was Groknar, then surely they wouldn't actually let Jake. And in the other corner, Lyra Vaughn's voice cut through the din, now definitely tinged with disbelief, standing at a mere 1.8 meters, with only 2 arms and skin that bruises if you look at it too hard, a newcomer from the mysterious death world known as Earth. Jake Harrison. The opposite gate opened, and out strolled Jake, looking for all the world like he was heading to a casual picnic rather than a fight to the death. He was wearing what appeared to be standard-issue Galactic Confederation peacekeeping armor, but he'd somehow bedazzled it with glitter and were those googly eyes on the shoulders. In his hands, Jake held what looked like a heavily modified leaf blower. He waved cheerfully at the crowd, then turned to Groknar and gave a friendly nod. Hey, big guy. Love the whole multi-armed harbinger of doom look you've got going on. Very chic. The stadium went so quiet you could hear a pin drop, or in this case, the sound of several thousand alien jaws hitting the floor simultaneously. Groknar, clearly not used to such a cavalier attitude from its prey, let out another earth-shattering roar. Acidic spittle flew from its maw, sizzling where it landed on the arena floor. Jake's response was to pull out a pair of sunglasses from who knows where and put them on with a flourish. Ooh, spicy. I like it. In the stands, ZX Klorp was seriously considering, if it was possible for a Quartzian to die from second-hand embarrassment. He watched in horrified fascination as his human friend squared off against a creature that made Earth's most terrifying predators look like cuddly pets. Lyra Von's voice, now strained with a mix of professional duty and personal concern, rang out once more. Competitors, remember the sacred rules of combat. The match ends when one fighter yields, or is no longer capable of continuing. May the stars guide your fates. Let the battle begin. The moment the words left Lyra Von's mouth, Groknar charged forward with all the subtlety of an angry rhinoceros shot out of a cannon. Its 7 arms whirled like a deadly windmill, claws gleaming under the arena lights. Jake, displaying a disturbing lack of self-preservation instinct, stood his ground. Just as Groknar was about to turn him into a red smear on the arena floor, the human activated his strange weapon. The modified leaf blower roared to life, spewing forth a torrent of glitter. The arena filled with a shimmering cloud of tiny, reflective particles. Groknar, caught off guard by this unorthodox attack, skidded to a halt, all 14 of its eyes blinking rapidly in confusion. "What's the matter?" Big guy Jake's voice rang out from somewhere in the glittery haze. "Not a fan of arts and crafts." A furious roar was the only response as Groknar began swinging its arms wildly, trying to connect with its elusive opponent. But Jake, demonstrating a nimbleness that belied his species' reputation, ducked and weaved through the storm of flailing limbs. In the stands, the crowd watched in stunned silence. This was not how gladiatorial combat was supposed to go. Where was the blood? The gore? The tragic yet inspiring last stands? ZX Klorp, for his part, was torn between covering his eyes and not daring to blink lest he miss his friend's last moments. "By the crystal caves of Quartz Prime," he muttered, "I can't believe I'm watching my best friend engage in mortal combat with a creature that eats black holes for breakfast. And he's winning." Indeed, Jake seemed to be holding his own. Every time Groknar's claws came close, the human would roll, jump, or in one particularly show-offy moment, backflip out of the way. All the while, he kept up a steady stream of chatter that seemed to be driving the Kronos berserker to new heights of fury. "You know, I had a cat back on Earth that fought, just like you," Jake called out, ducking under a swipe that would have taken his head clean off. Of course, Mr. Whiskers only had 4 legs and was about yay high, but the resemblance is uncanny. Groknar let out a bellow of rage and frustration. It wasn't used to prey that talked back, let alone prey that seemed to be treating a death match like some sort of deranged dance party. Jake, seizing on his opponent's confusion, went on the offensive. He charged forward, sliding between Groknar's legs like a baser runner stealing home. As he passed under the behemoth, he reached up with his free hand and tickled it. The reaction was immediate and spectacular. Groknar let out a sound that could only be described as a squeal, leaping a good meter into the air. The ground shook when it landed, nearly knocking several spectators out of their seats. Ticklish. Jake's grin was audible, even if the glitter cloud obscured him from view. Guess even big bad berserkers have their weak spots. In the commentator's box, Lyra Von was having what appeared to be an existential crisis. Their melodious voice cracked as they attempted to narrate this most unusual of battles. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of indeterminate gender, I'm not quite sure how to describe what we're seeing. The human appears to be employing some sort of guerrilla tickle warfare. Down in the arena, the battle continued to unfold in increasingly bizarre ways. Jake, realizing that his glitter attack had coated Groknar's scales, making them sparkle like a disco ball, decided to capitalize on this unexpected development. "Hey Groknar, buddy," he called out, dodging another flurry of strikes. "Has anyone ever told you that you've got great potential as a dance floor attraction? I mean, with all those arms, you could really tear up the club scene." To demonstrate his point, Jake began to dance. It was a strange, jerky movement that looked part robot, part seizure, and part interpretive dance routine based on the mating habits of the Blastorian slug people. In the crowd, which had been watching in stunned silence, suddenly erupted into a mix of laughter, cheers, and confused screaming. Several beings began to mimic Jake's dance moves, causing a wave of chaotic movement to sweep through the stands. Groknar, for its part, seemed utterly bewildered. Its attacks became less coordinated, more frantic, as if it couldn't quite believe what it was seeing. Here was prey that not only refused to die but seemed to be actively enjoying itself. ZX Klorp, watching from his seat with a mix of horror and reluctant admiration, found himself wondering if perhaps he had underestimated his human friend. Or maybe, he thought as he watched Jake narrowly avoid being impaled by one of Groknar's razor-sharp claws, humans were just collectively insane. Down in the arena, Jake was starting to show signs of fatigue. His movements, while still impressively agile, were becoming slower. Sweat poured down his face, mixing with the glitter to create a strange, shimmering war paint. "All right, big guy," Jake panted, dodging another swipe. "I think it's time we wrap this up. I've got a date with a cold shower and about 16 cheeseburgers after this." With a move that seemed to defy several laws of physics, Jake suddenly sprinted directly at Groknar. The crowd gasped collectively, certain they were about to witness the human's messy demise. But Jake, displaying that uniquely human blend of insanity and ingenuity, had one last trick up his sleeve. Just as he reached Groknar, he activated his leaf blower again. This time, however, instead of glitter, it spewed forth a torrent of what looked suspiciously like. "Is that shaving cream?" ZX muttered in disbelief. Indeed it was. The arena floor quickly became coated in a thick layer of frothy white foam. Groknar, caught off guard by this new development, lost its footing. Seven arms windmilled comically as the massive creature struggled to maintain its balance. Jake, seemingly immune to the slippery conditions later, he would credit this to years of practice running on ice to catch the school bus circled around behind Groknar. With a whoop of triumph, he launched himself onto the berserker's back. "Yeehaw! Ride EM!" Cowboy Jake shouted, clinging to Groknar's thrashing form like a rodeo star on the universe's angriest mechanical bull. The crowd went wild. Aliens who had never heard of cowboys or rodeos found themselves inexplicably shouting yeehaw. Betting pools that had initially given Jake odds of 10,000 to 1 were hurriedly being recalculated. Groknar, now in full panic mode, spun and bucked, trying desperately to dislodge its unwelcome passenger. But Jake held on with grim determination, one hand fisted in the berserker's scaly hide, the other still clutching his leaf blower-turned-foam cannon. "You know," Jake called out conversationally, as if he wasn't currently riding on the back of a homicidal alien monster, "I'm starting to think you might have some anger management issues. Have you considered meditation? I hear it does wonders for stress." Groknar's only response was a roar of pure frustration. It redoubled its efforts to shake Jake off, spinning faster and faster until it resembled nothing so much as a giant, scaly, seven-arm top. And that's when Jake made his move. With timing that would have made an action movie choreographer weep with joy, Jake leapt from Groknar's back just as the creature's spin reached its apex. The berserker, unable to stop its momentum, went sliding across the foam-slicked arena floor like an oversized hockey puck. There was a moment of breathless silence as everyone watched Groknar's unstoppable trajectory. Then, with a resounding crash that shook the entire stadium, the Kronos berserker slammed headfirst into the arena wall. The impact was so tremendous that for a moment, ZX feared the entire structure might come down. Cracks spiderwebbed across the reinforced barricade, and a cloud of dust filled the air. As the debris settled, all eyes turned to the crumpled form of Groknar. The mighty berserker lay motionless, all seven of its arms splayed out at awkward angles. A soft groan emanated from its direction, but it made no move to get up. And there, standing atop the fallen giant like a conquering hero, was Jake. His armor was dented, his hair was a disaster of sweat and glitter, and he was covered head to toe in shaving cream. But he was grinning from ear to ear. So Jake called out, his voice echoing in the stunned silence of the arena, "Does this mean I win? Because I gotta say, that was one hell of a workout." For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. It was as if the entire stadium was holding its breath, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Then, like a dam bursting, the crowd erupted. Cheers, screams, and sounds that defied description filled the air. Aliens of all species jumped to their feet, or equivalent appendages, caught up in the infectious excitement of Jake's unlikely victory. In the commentator's box, Lyra Von seemed to be having some sort of spiritual experience. Their voice, when it finally came through the speakers, was filled with awe. "Incredible. Unprecedented. In all my years I have never... Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary beings, we have just witnessed history. Jake Harrison, the human from Earth, has defeated Groknar the Annihilator." Down in the arena, medical teams were cautiously approaching Groknar's prone form. The berserker was still breathing, but it looked like it would be a while before it was annihilating anything more dangerous than a bowl of soup. Jake, for his part, seemed remarkably unfazed by his brush with death. He was busy trying to scrape some of the glitter off his armor, pausing occasionally to wave at the cheering crowd. In the stands, ZX found himself being jostled by overexcited aliens wanting to touch the friend of the victor. The Quartzian was still trying to process what he had just seen. Part of him wondered if perhaps he had accidentally ingested some hallucinogenic spores before the match. As Jake was led from the arena, waving and blowing kisses like a beauty pageant winner, ZX finally managed to shake off his daze. He hurried down to meet his friend, equal parts relieved, amazed, and utterly terrified of what Jake might consider challenging after this. He found Jake in the competitor's preparation area, being fussed over by a team of medics who seemed more confused than concerned. Jake's face lit up when he saw his friend. ZX buddy. Did you see that? Talk about a rush. Jake was practically bouncing with residual adrenaline. I think I found my new favorite sport. ZX crystalline form shimmered with what might have been a Quartzian equivalent of a long-suffering sigh. Jake, my fragile and apparently indestructible friend, I believe we need to have a serious discussion about your definition of fun. Jake laughed, clapping ZX on the back and nearly shattering him in the process. Oh, come on. It wasn't that bad. Besides, think of the story we'll have to tell at the next Galactic Confederation mixer. Before ZX could formulate a response that adequately conveyed his mix of relief, exasperation, and lingering terror, they were interrupted by the arrival of Lyravon. The master of ceremonies looked like they had aged several years in the span of the match. Mr. Harrison, Lyravon began, their melodious voice tinged with a mix of respect and residual disbelief. On behalf of the Kryzax Arena, I must extend our congratulations on your unprecedented victory. Jake beamed. Thanks. It was a blast. Hey, quick question, do you guys do punch cards? You know, fight 10 berserkers, get the 11th match free. Lyravon's iridescent eyes blinked rapidly, as if trying to process this request. Aye. That is, we don't typically. They trailed off, clearly at a loss for words. ZX sensing his friend was about to talk himself into even more trouble, quickly intervened. What my esteemed and clearly concussed companion means to say is thank you for the opportunity. We'll be on our way now. Come along, Jake. I believe you mentioned something about cheeseburgers. As ZX all but dragged Jake towards the exit, Lyravon called after them. Mr. Harrison, one last thing. As victor, you're entitled to claim a trophy from your defeated opponent. Would you like us to remove one of Groknar's claws or perhaps a tooth for you? Jake paused, considering. For a moment, ZX feared he might actually take them up on the offer. But then a mischievous grin spread across the human's face. You know what? I've got a better idea. Could you guys do me a favor and take a picture of Groknar? You know, all glittery and covered in shaving cream? I think that'll make a much better souvenir. And with that, Jake sauntered out of the arena, leaving behind a wake of bewildered aliens and shattered preconceptions about the nature of combat, bravery, and the proper use of cosmetic products in gladiatorial settings. ZX hurrying to keep up with his friend's long strides, couldn't help but shake his head in a mix of exasperation and grudging admiration. I suppose I should be grateful you didn't challenge the entire Kronos Berserker squad to a rematch, he muttered. Jake's eyes lit up. Ooh, now there's an idea. Think they'd go for a tag team match. We could take them together, buddy. You with your crystal powers, me with my leaf blower of doom. As Jake continued to excitedly plan increasingly outlandish battle scenarios, ZX realized two things. First, that he was going to need to find a therapist who specialized in dealing with the friends of adrenaline junkie Deathworlders. And second, that life with Jake Harrison around was going to be many things, but it would certainly never be boring. Come on, ZX said, steering Jake towards the spaceport. Let's get you those cheeseburgers before you decide to challenge a black hole to a staring contest. Jake laughed, throwing an arm around his friend's crystalline shoulders. ZX my man, this is why you're the brains of this operation. Ooh, speaking of operations, did I ever tell you about the time I performed an emergency appendectomy on myself using nothing but a rusty spoon and a bottle of hot sauce? As Jake launched into yet another improbable tale, ZX found himself wondering, not for the first time, if perhaps humans were the most terrifying species in the galaxy after all. not because of their strength or their technology, but because of their seemingly limitless capacity to treat mortal peril as if it were nothing more than an entertaining diversion. And as they made their way through the streets of the alien city, leaving behind a trail of glitter and bewildered onlookers, ZX Clorp couldn't help but feel a strange sense of pride. After all, how many beings could say they were best friends with a human crazy enough to use a leaf blower in a gladiator match and win? The galaxy, ZX Clorp decided, had better watch out. Because if this was Jake Harrison's idea of practice, he couldn't wait to see what the human would do when he was really trying. On second thought, maybe he could wait. Preferably somewhere very far away, with excellent insurance coverage.